Hi and welcome to Select Cycling Products. My name is Lee and I'm going to show you how to do a deep clean on a bicycle chain ready for a wax submersion. So where do we begin? First off, I've got an old cardboard box here. I've just cut the top off of it, just made it into like a little tray, and that's basically just to catch any spills from when we're pouring any of the liquids into any of the containers, and obviously manipulating the chain. If you can avoid getting it on household items or tables or anything like that, then it's always a benefit. So first off, we're going to need a jar for the white spirit. It doesn't need to be one of these style of jars. It could be an old jam jar, an old Nutella jar, but as long as you can get the chain in there and liquid that will go above the chain so it's fully submerged, anything will be fine. Second jar is going to be for the degreaser. Again, ideally to have a lid on it because we're going to be giving it a shake and an agitate. Same with the first stage. For the alcohol stage, I like to use just a plastic container, one that you can pour with. Reason being that once you've got down to the stage of applying the alcohol, the chain is perfectly clean and the only thing that should be on it is water. So mixing that with the alcohol is not a problem, and I generally take what's left over after we've wiped the chain and submerged it, tip it back into the bottle. Use it for next time. Also, you're going to need some tissues or some old rag. You can maybe have an old t-shirt that you can rip up and use. You want 3 separate ones, one for the first stage, one for the second stage, one for this third stage. And then obviously you're going to need a chain, and once you've got all those things together, then we're ready to get started. Okay, so let's get started with this. So I'm going to put my gloves on. Again, the only reason I put gloves on is just because I don't like to get this smell on my hands. You don't have to use these style of gloves. You can also get the plastic ones that you'll find at like a supermarket, petrol station or something like that. You might be able to pick up a couple. Nothing fancy. Like, again, it's just to protect you from the smell more than anything. So what we want to do is we want to open up the chain. Now this works if you've got a chain that you've been using for a while, and it's just got oil on it. This one I've just so happened to have one that was new, but the stages are all exactly the same. So you get your first jar, you want to get your chain and just throw it in there. Now you want to get it as flat as you can to the bottom, and the only reason being you can save using too much liquid. If you have it all the way up here, then you want to be trying to submerge the whole thing, and you're just going to be wasting white spirit, and that's not really ideal. Okay, so what I'm looking for here is I just want to submerge the chain. So as soon as you've gone just above the chain, then you're at a good point. The chain is fully submerged and ready for the white spirit to do its thing. So what I like to do now is just give the jar a bit of a shake, and that's why I like to have one that's got a lid on it. What we're doing here is we're just manipulating the chain, agitating it so that the links move. So what you're doing is you're pushing white spirit into all the nooks and crannies, the rollers and the pins, so that it starts to dissolve everything that's on there. Now, as you can see, this is a brand new chain. This has just got the factory grease on it, and you can see straight away that it's filthy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to agitate this for another couple of minutes, and I'll come back to you. So I've had this sat on the side for about 10 minutes. Each time I went past it, I just gave it a little shake, and you can see, I hope you can see from there, but you can see how filthy and dirty and greasy this is, and this is a brand new chain. So I'm just going to leave that to sit for another couple of minutes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip the contents of this out into a safe container so you can dispose of later. And then I'm just going to refill it with some more white spirit. And I'm going to do that until we get to a point where the liquid comes out completely clear after you've changed it. Tip that liquid out, and then we can move on to the next stage. which is using the degreaser. Okay, so unfortunately we had a couple of technical issues with the audio on this section of the video. It was very unrecognisable and it didn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do is just going to talk you through exactly what's going on in this section of the video. So we've come to the end of the white spirit stage, which has gotten rid of all the factory grease that was on the new chain that I've just cleaned. This would be exactly the same as if you were using a used chain that has oil and dirt and grime on it. So what you've done to this point in time is basically you've removed all the grease, the oil, any dirt, any grit that's in between the rollers, and now we're just trying to look to get the chain as clean as possible so that we'll get it down to the bare metal. So what we want to do now is we want to place the chain into the water-based degreaser. The key to this is submerge the chain as we did in the past stage. Try and get the water-based degreaser in between all the nooks and crannies, the rollers and the plates, so that we can remove as much of the residue from the previous stage as possible. If we don't do that, then it's going to be very difficult for the wax to adhere to the chain, and you're going to get poor results. So this is an important stage to get right. Okay, so I've placed the chain into the tub, given it a good shake. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave that for 10 or 15 minutes just to settle and to sit, let it soak in. Then I'll come back, tip away the water and degreaser, and repeat until a point where when you come to take the chain out and you sniff it, you can't smell any of the previous stage on it. So if you'd used petrol or you'd used white spirit, you're going to get that smell that's very recognisable. As soon as you can't smell it anymore and all you can smell is the degreaser, then you're at the point where we can get rid of the degreaser, and we do that by simply running it under a tap. And repeat that process until you can't smell the degreaser on the chain anymore. At that point, you know that the chain is fully cleaned and ready for the final stage. So, okay, now what we're going to do is we're just going to take the chain out now that we feel that we've got it as clean as possible, give it a wipe down, and then we're ready to just stick it under the tap, get it nice and clean. Okay, so I've just gone away, given it a wipe down, I've rinsed the chain thoroughly for a couple of minutes underneath a tap. When I smell it, there's no aromas coming off from any of the previous stages, so we're in a good position now to move on to the last stage, which is going to be the alcohol. Now, you don't necessarily need to do this. This is just something that we do, especially when we're doing it for people's race chains. We want to make sure that there's absolutely nothing left inside the chain, especially things like water and stuff. But if you wanted to, you could just let this dry and then move on to the wax dipping. But if you're going to do it properly, which we advise, then get this stage done as well. So, just going to want to pour some alcohol into our little jug. Again, all we want to do here is, because this is a perfectly clean chain now, we're not doing any cleaning now. All we're doing is we're mixing it with any water that may be left on it. And this means that when we take it out and we get it fully dry, then there's not going to be any contaminants from water. It could be that you live in an area where it's got like hard water, there's a lot of high calcium content. You don't really want any of that inside your chain. If you can avoid getting that on there, then you're going to get a much better performing chain. We found when people have missed out this stage that when we put it on our jig, we found that the actual the wattage increases slightly. So if you're going to do it properly. That's what I would suggest. So all we want to do now is just get this really covered, work it into all the links. This is going to remove any of the water, and the beautiful thing about this alcohol is it dries to nothing, doesn't leave any residue or anything left on the chain. It's okay, I'm just going to let that sit now for 5 minutes, come back, give it a quick agitate, and then we'll give it a quick clean up, and then we're ready to go with the waxing. Okay, so I've allowed this to sit now for a good 5-10 minutes. Like I said before at the start, I like to reuse the alcohol. It's not contaminated. I'm just going to get this back into the bottle. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is take off the excess from the chain. Just use a clean towel, or if you've been using like an old t-shirt, you can use like an old t-shirt. And I'm just going to give this a couple of passes through. And this just ensures that we get as much of the alcohol off as possible. Just makes it dry a little bit quicker. So there we go. Like I say, this doesn't take long. You'll be able to feel now how clean the chain is. Probably the cleanest chain you've ever seen. There we go. All right. So, yeah, all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hang this up. I'm going to let it dry for probably about the next 30 minutes. It's fairly warm here. And then we're ready to go on with the waxing. So just to recap, this is a 4-stage cleanup. First stage is the white spirit. Get yourself a separate jar for that. Submerge the chain, whether it's a used chain or a brand new chain, into the jar. Give it a good shake and agitate. Leave it 20-30 minutes. Come back, tip away the dirty residue. Put some more white spirit in and keep doing that until you get to the point where the liquid that's going in is coming out as clean as it went in. You can leave it for longer. Something that we've done before is certainly, if you've got a few chains, chuck them into a tub, leave them overnight, let them soak. That'll give it a really, really good clean. Once you've done that, then we're ready to move on to the next stage, and that was the water-based degreaser. Now the water-based degreaser is just a stage to get rid of the white spirit. The cleaning is, most of the cleaning has actually been done. So once you've got rid of the white spirit, with the degreaser, then we want to move on to rinsing it under the tap. Warm water works well. Just give it a really good agitate. Keep smelling the chain. If you can smell that there's anything on it, then keep rinsing. You're not quite ready. Once you've done that, give it a wipe down. Let it dry for a couple of minutes, and then we want to put it into a tub with the alcohol. And like I said before, the alcohol is mainly to get rid of any of the contaminants that the water may have. Now, if you're using things like distilled water, it's not going to matter so much. But if you're just using your ordinary tap water, then you're going to get things like calcium deposits and stuff can get onto the chain. And any contamination at this stage, you know, you're not doing yourself any favours. So once we've put it into the alcohol, we take it out, we give it a quick wipe, and then we just take it now. I'm just going to go and hook it over a screw that's attached to the wall, let it dry, and then we're on to the stage where we can actually start waxing. Now, all this may seem like it's a laborious task, and it feels like it is, so I'd advise probably doing it to like 2 or 3 chains at a time. I would always advise having 2 or 3 chains on the run anyway, just because it makes it much easier for doing the waxing. You're not sitting there waiting for your one chain to be waxed so you can't get out on the bike. So we do that, and you just rotate the chains, and it doesn't become so much of a hassle. But yeah, get it perfectly clean, and you'll never have to do this stage again.